Greetings, programmers. Welcome back. We're now on number 8 of our memory making tutorial. Busted Thumbs here with Fluffy Wishes once again.
Hello!
And we're starting to get to the point where we can actually make a game. This is great. We've got our game board all laid out in front of us. We just now have to be able to let the player actually play a game. You want to see some of the pictures?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be the next step for us to do, is to actually see what the pictures are. Before we do anything fancy with those, let's just make it so when somebody clicks on a card, it shows the picture that's behind it. I think that's actually quite easy to do. We do need to figure out when somebody clicks on it, and that's done when this sprite is clicked right here. You know what, let's go ahead and move that guy over. We'll move this guy up to the top, and we'll start working with that. When this sprite is clicked, we simply have to change the backdrop, the costume of that tile of the card, to be the one that it represents. And it knows that the data for where that card is, it's in board tiles. We know that. And it knows what row and column it is, so we just simply have to switch the costume. So go ahead in here and say switch the costume to, and the thing that we're going to switch it to is an item inside of our board tiles. So let's go grab that item from our board tiles. And we just have to do a little bit of math again. So what is this? This one is 0, right? And this one is 1, and that one's 2 in terms of the column and the row. And it's the same thing with the list. Our list has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's what it means to be in that particular position. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of math here. I count in zeros, Scratch counts in ones. So we're going to find out the 0th item is that. So no matter what number we figure out, we're going to have to add 1 to it. That's the first thing we have to do. That makes sense? Because I count from 0 and this counts from 1. They can't hear you when you shake your head.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The next thing we have to do is figure out what that number actually is. So what we're going to have to do is add 2 things together, something that has to do with the row and something that has to do with the column. Well, the column's easy. We just 1, 2, 3, 4, we go over with the column. So let's go ahead and say my column goes in there. Right, and then it's going to kind of crawl into here, but we'll move it in a minute. And the row's a little bit more difficult because the row, for every time we go down a row, we have to increase by the number of tiles. How many tiles do we have in one row?
4.
4. So on the first row, we don't want to increase by anything. It's just the column, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. But for the second one, we want to increase by the number. So we're going to have to go 4 plus 0, 1, 2, 3. Well, that's multiplication. So what that's going to be is my row times the number of columns. Number of columns. And that's going to give us the place that we need to look into board tiles to find out what the name of the costume was. Just like that. So let's try that. I think right now it should work. Let's go ahead and play this. We'll make it bigger. Let's play on a small board. Parrot there, snowflake there. See, just like that. We can now click on everything and our randomized list of tiles. Now it's starting to look like a real game. And just to show that it does actually work on the other sizes, there's our medium board. We have some other things. We didn't see the earth before, or the octopus. There we go. It's actually almost kind of fun already, just figuring out where everything is. And you can find the pairs in there. So that was only 1 line of code, and we already have our game looking a little bit better than it was before. Remember though that I said when things are being clicked, I don't want to do anything while we're creating a tile clone. So let's show you the trick that makes that happen. What we want to do is use this guy right here. It says if is creating a tile clone is equal to true. So grab that data for is creating a tile clone. That guy right there. Then what we want to do is, if that's the case, we don't want to do anything else in here. So Scratch has a way of doing that, and it has here this stop guy. We don't want to stop all. We want to stop this particular script. So if this condition happens, we're not going to do anything else below here. We're going to just stop and say wait till the next time he's clicked, which is great. That's what we want. And the costume's going to switch on when we want it to. So good job there. It's not the game though. How does the game really work?
You have to flip them over and try to get matches.
Yeah, who does?
The players.
Yeah, one at a time though,
Yeah.
right? So the first thing we really need to keep track of, we need to keep track of two things. One, we need to keep track of whose turn it is. And two, we need to keep track of whether we're looking at the first tile or the second tile, right? So let's create variables for that. Those can be global. Whose turn? Okay, whose turn? And we set those global things up here. We're always going to start with the player 1's turn. So when we initialize the data, let's say whose turn is 1. Okay, and when we initialize the data for a new game, we actually need to set it there too, right? In a new game, it should be player 1's turn every time. So let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Set whose turn to 1. Okay, so it's always player 1's turn. Then there's one other piece we said we had to keep track of, which is
which tile you're clicking. The first tile you clicked or the second tile?
Right, are you looking at your first tile for your turn or your second one? What should we call that variable?
Which tile?
How about is first tile? And then we can use true and false again. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's set that guy up. His first tile, this guy should be true, right? Because the first time we're doing it is always going to be the first tile. True. Okay, so now we've kept track of that. We've got the player's score. We know whose turn it is. We did say that we wanted to put something up there, a sprite that says it's this person's turn or that person's turn, right? That was going to go at the very top here. So we don't need to see these two guys because they're kind of confusing, but we want to put another sprite in there that says it's the first player's turn and the second player's turn. So let's make a new sprite, one that we're going to draw. And I think we can just do white text. So we're going to have that be vector. Let's call this sprite player's turn. Something like that. And let's go ahead and use text. This is going to be hard to see because it's going to be white on this background here. But let's go ahead and type it in. In fact, we'll type it in black, then we'll change it.
Wrong font.
Oh, that's right. We like that scratchy font, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Scratch. Let's try again. Player 1. Something like that. Okay? Now that guy, put him kind of centered in there. Let's kind of zoom in to make sure we see where that center spot is. The center spot's right there. We want that to be, see that little green dot? If we put that little green dot inside the middle of that center turn, that makes him always be centered. Although is that big enough? We probably actually want it to be bigger. Let's make it bigger first, then we'll put it in the center. There. So we're going to have him sit like that. And there we can see him right there, so let's see how that fits. Stick him right about there, and then we'll turn him white. Like that. So it'll look like that. Does that look okay? Can we read that?
Mm-hmm.
Be nice to have a little shadow on it or something, but we'll just leave it. I think that's okay. So that's costume 1. That says player 1. And we'll go ahead and duplicate that one. And we'll simply turn that 1 into a 2 for player 2's turn. And that made it a little bit longer, so we're going to just kind of center that guy again. That one now says player 2's turn. It's player 1, player 2. That's what we want. And let's go into the scripts for this guy now. He's need to handle some events like when I receive initialize data. There isn't really any data for him. But there is initialize data for a new game, and that's when we want to put him at the top where he is right now. So that height's about what we want. Is that about 150 on Y, maybe 155. So let's go ahead and set his X and Y. His X, we want him right in the middle, so that's 0. And his Y, let's make it 155. And when we start, we actually don't want him showing up, so let's hide, because we don't want him showing up in the beginning of the game, right? So he's gone, hidden. That's perfect. We want him to start showing when we actually start a game, so that's when we lay out the game board. That's when we want to make sure that we set the costume correctly. And that will be, well, let's put show in there first. I'm going to make sure he shows up. The other thing we're going to want to do is kind of handle, a player's turn might have changed at any point, right? But he doesn't keep track of when that happens. So he's just going to have to listen to an event that says when a player's turn has changed. So, whoops, that's when key is pressed. So the thing he needs to listen to is when, and we're going to have a new message, player turn changed. When a player's turn is changed, what's his responsibility?
He has to switch costume to the
he
correct
has to turn to the correct costume. And we're keeping track of that in the player turn. Whose turn?
Yes.
Whose turn in one or two, right? So we can very simply put an if then else, and we'll say if the player turn is equal to what?
True.
I think we did those by number. The one we used
Oh
for
yes,
false is
yes, we did 1 and 2.
Right. So if we say if whose turn is equal to 1, then what do we need to do?
Then he switches the costume to player 1.
Right. Otherwise,
he switches to player 2.
Just like that. So all we have to do then here is make sure that we broadcast that data here. In fact, let's broadcast and wait. Let's make sure that he changes the costume before we show him. So we broadcast that the player turn is changed, and that'll make sure that the correct costume shows up when we show. Alright, so what I would expect now when we actually hit play is when we hit the start of this game, this guy's not here. When we hit play, it'll say player 1's turn.
Okay.
Can you check that? Go ahead and make him big again. Let's see what happens. Oh, it's showing up. It didn't hide. Well, that's no good. But it did switch its costume correctly, so let's figure out why it didn't hide. Initialize data for a new game happens when initialize data. Oh, it's initialize data that we do at the very beginning. Initialize data for a new game is when they click a button. Okay, so we got the wrong message here, but that's really easy to fix. Initialize data. Now it should work. Make it big again, hit play. There it is, it's gone. Hit it, and it's there. That's what we wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, looks good. Okay, so we know we've got the indication of the player's turn, and we've got the player to go, and actually he's clicking the first time. We've already handled that properly. So let's go back to the card and handle the logic for when he does that click. When he does that click, this is correct. This is the exact behavior we want for the first click. We just want it to show up no matter what it happens to be, right? The second click is a little more interesting. So on the second click, what I think we should do is make him show up, that second item, but it should show up only for a little bit of time, like maybe a few seconds. And then, well, if they're the same, we should get rid of those tiles and add a point and let them go again. But if they're different, then we need to just have it show up for a little bit and then stop.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, so we're going to have to do some special stuff when this thing clicked on the second time. So it's okay in both cases to show the item, but what we're going to have to do here is have some special stuff if it's not the first turn. In fact, we're going to have to do for both cases. So the easiest case is when it's the first item, right? So what we say is if, and we use the data which says if it's the first turn, where is that?
Is first tile. 4 from the top.
Yep, is first tile. Perfect. So if it's the first tile, this is really easy. All we have to do is say that it's not the first tile. So we say is first tile, and we simply set that to false. Right? That means the next time he comes through, he'll switch the costume again, but he'll see that, oh, we're actually on the second tile. So we have to do something special here. So how many seconds should we wait?
Just 2 or 3.
Well, you know, let's start with 2 and see what happens.
Alright.
Alright, so one thing I do want to keep track of is whether we're in this period where we're waiting. So let's make another variable. It's kind of like is creating tile clones. I don't want to handle any more clicks while we're waiting. And Scratch is a little bit strange about that, and this way is the way I think it should work, and we might have to do some fancy stuff a little bit later if this doesn't work anymore. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a variable that says it's for everybody, is revealing tile, something like that. Okay, and of course, because we've made another variable, we have to go and set is revealing tile at to the right values to begin with. So we set here is revealing tile to false, and we'll set it again here. And the reason we're doing this is because while it's sitting there with that second one there, we don't want people clicking around the other buttons, right? So let's go back to the card and make sure that this guy that stopped the script now has 2 things to look for. And this time, if either of them is true, we used and before, now we're going to use or. If either one of these things is true, then we don't want it to go anymore. So this guy says is revealing tile. If he's true, we also don't want to go. Means we're kind of getting that guy's way, so let's shove him over a little bit. And this guy too. I'm just going to move those over. So if either of those conditions is true, it's not going to happen. So we have to make sure that we're going to set that as well when we get into here. I'm going to say set is revealing tile to true. Then we're going to do a bunch of stuff, and then we're going to set it back again. So stuff's going to go in between here. We're going to say is revealing tiles false here. Don't worry, there's stuff happens in between. Alright, so we've accomplished a bunch in this already, right? We just had a bunch of blank tiles that were up there, the back of our cards, and we were able to click them, see the images on them. We now know whose turn it is, we know which part of their turn it is. All those things we didn't have before, and we're getting very close to actually having a game to work with. Now we've run out of time for this particular episode, but I think in the next one we should be able to figure out, get the entire turn done, hopefully, in the amount of time we have. Exciting? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're getting to the point where this game's almost done. It's going to be fun. Alright, well, go ahead and give a try on your own on these things in the break that we have between episodes, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye!